Now listen, I know what you're thinking. I hope this is not another cottage cheese video, but man, I'm telling you, I am on a cottage cheese kick. But this here is a variation on an old Southern recipe for buttermilk pie, but I've made a cottage cheese pie. And I did a little chocolate crumble to go on the top and bottom. And I'm telling you, whether you like cottage cheese or you don't like cottage cheese, you're absolutely gonna love this. I'm not a cottage cheese fan as far as eating it right out of the container, like all the health advice told you to do for years and years. But hey, give it to me in a pie. It's high protein, low carb. I am all in. Let's talk about it right after this. When you eat this pie, you will have no idea that it has cottage cheese in it. You probably already have all the ingredients unless you don't have cottage cheese sitting around, which lately, I've had a lot of cottage cheese sitting around because I've been making a lot of stuff with it. Now I know you don't want to hear me talk about cottages or cheeses probably. You want to hear me talk about a pie. So let's go to the kitchen and I'll show you what you need to put together this chocolate, this keto, this low carb, keto, chocolate crumble, cottage cheese pie. I need to come up with a better name than that, but that's all I got so far. Let's go in the kitchen. So the first thing you're gonna need for this keto pie is some cottage cheese. Make sure you get the full fat, 4%. You're gonna need 3.5 cups of it. The next thing you're gonna need is 3 eggs. Now I get these at Aldi, or a lot of times I'll get them from my local farm. Free range is important, and if you get them local, just know how they're raised. You're gonna need some dark chocolate, or whatever kind of cocoa powder you like. You're gonna need 2 tablespoons of that. Then you're gonna need my favorite Splenda Magic Baker's Blend. You're gonna need 1.25 cups of it, plus a little bit for the top if you want that crumble to be just a little sweeter. The next thing you're gonna need is some psyllium husk powder. You're gonna need 4 tablespoons of it, or a little less depending on how you want your texture. The 4 tablespoons gives it a pretty firm, almost gelatinous top and bottom. So if you don't like that, you can use a little less. Now go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees. That's the temperature that we're gonna bake this at. Sometimes I've found that when you buy cottage cheese, it's a little too wet. So there's 2 things you can do. The first is just take a little strainer like this before you get ready to make it. And you're gonna put your cottage cheese in there and let it sit and drain out for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And then just get rid of the liquid. Now if it's really, really wet, like I have found with this Walmart brand, you can take your salad spinner and put the cottage cheese right inside there. And I'll put a link in the description to the one I use. We use it a lot for salads, but I found that for cottage cheese, this works really, really good. So you'll just put the lid on it, you know, if you can figure out how to do it, and then snap it into place. And just turn that handle around and around, or if you've got one with a string on it, you can pull that. I don't like the ones with a string because they tend to break pretty easy. But this one is attached and it does a great job. And this cottage cheese was a perfect consistency, but I just wanted to show you how good a job this does. So then you can take the top off of it and look how dry that is. You can see that liquid all around the outside of it. So it works perfect. Now the strainer method's not gonna get out that much of the liquid, so if you think you're pretty close on the moisture level that you need, I would use the strainer method. If not, I would use this. You might just wanna do that to see how much liquid that I got in there, so you know what the perfect cottage cheese consistency and moisture level is for this recipe. But now I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that back in because it was perfect. So I'll just put my liquid back in, give it a proper stir. And then if you did this to just make sure you had the right moisture level, then this is what it should look like when you get done. This is the consistency you want so that this comes out just right. So first of all, we're gonna make our chocolate crumble. So you're gonna take 1.5 cups of that 3.5 cups of cottage cheese. You're gonna add in 1/4 cup of the sweetener, that Magic Baker's Blend. Next, you're gonna go in with some psyllium husk powder. Now remember, if you have some texture issues, you might want to start with 2 tablespoons first, but if you want to make it exactly like I do, you're going to use 4 tablespoons of this. If you have moderate texture issues, hey, use 3 tablespoons. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. But wait, there's more. Now to have a chocolate crumble, we got to have some chocolate, right? So I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of this cocoa powder. I like the dark, but you can use whatever kind of cocoa powder that you like. Just make sure, read the label, make sure there's no added sugar in it. Now we're just going to give this all a good mix together until all the ingredients are incorporated, and then our chocolate crumble part is done. Now if you feel like that this chocolate crumble is a little bit too dry, you can always go in and add a little bit of heavy cream, or if you got any of that cottage cheese liquid left over from where you drained it or strained it or spun it, you can always add that back in too. You don't want it to be wet though. You want it to be pretty dry on top so that it forms a nice crust, and especially if you use less than the 4 tablespoons, for the texture you want to make sure that it's about this consistency. So once you get done stirring, if you added that liquid back in, this is the consistency that you want. And now this crumble, crust, topping, whatever you want to call it, is done. Let's move on to the next step. Hey, if you're enjoying this and you like keto sweets like I do, make sure you subscribe right down there and hit the bell beside it. Anytime I do a new dessert video, which has ended up being about once a week, you're gonna know about it. And now we're gonna make the filling for this cheesecake pie cottage cheese goodness. We're gonna take 2 cups of the cottage cheese and put it right in our favorite yellow mixing bowl. Now to that, I'm gonna go ahead and add in 1 cup of the Magic Baker's blend. And if you don't get smoked like that, you're doing something wrong. Then I'm gonna add in the eggs, and come to think of it, if I added the eggs in first, probably wouldn't have been that much smoke, but hey, I don't mind. You know, I think the video needed some special effects, so that was it. Now I'm just going to take an immersion blender and blend all this together. You want to make sure it's really, really nice and smooth. You get all the lumps out of the cottage cheese on this middle part, not the first part. You want the first part to be nice and crumbly like that. But make sure you get it real smooth, and it's going to make an absolutely beautiful filling for this pie cake cheese, whatever we're going to call it. Just leave me a comment down there if you come up with a good name for this. Now I got to tell you this, I always film everything, and I made this part of the video when I was first testing the recipe out before I got the consistency right. And so if it is this soupy, it is not going to come out right. So watch the first part to see exactly what the consistency of the cottage cheese should be. And if it looks like that, it ain't going to work. So now we're going to take a pie plate and crumble up some parchment paper that's about the right size. That's my trick for getting this thing to stick down there. I know some people will spray it with non-stick spray to make sure it sticks to the glass or whatever. But if you'll just push it down like that, it'll stay put once you pour this in. I'm just going to take some scissors like this, and I'm going to go around the edge to make it just look a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, if you will. Then just press it in there like that, and do a little bit more trimming. Try to make it look as good as you can. And now that you got it trimmed up to your liking, just take some avocado oil spray, olive oil spray, or whatever you got that you want to spray, and spray it down so that nothing's going to stick to it. I mean, you could use butter, you could use bacon grease if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. Not sure that would taste too good. Did you catch that? Anyway, I'm going to take about half of this chocolate crumb mixture and put it right in the bottom like that. We're going to only use half of it because the other half is going to go on top to make the chocolate crumble. This is going to make the crust. So I'm just going to take my spoon or my hands or whatever I got that I want to press it down with, and just press it down pretty good on the bottom. You don't want to squish it or anything, but just make sure it's pressed in pretty good because it's going to form the crust for the bottom of this. Now I'm going to take that beautiful filling that we made. Now this is the right consistency. I'm going to pour it in just like that. It's going to go almost to the top. So hey, you may not want to cut as much of your parchment paper as I did, but hey, it'll be all right. And now for the finishing touch, we're going to take the other half of that chocolate crumble and crumble it all over the top. Now you may have a little bit more crumble than I do, You may have a little bit less, but either way, it's going to turn out just fine. And now it's time for this little trip to the oven. And we're going to cook this in the oven anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes. I'm going to start with 40 minutes, see how it looks, and then we'll go from there. So after 40 minutes, I'm going to say it's a thing of beauty. You may need a little bit longer, just depending on your oven or where you're at in the world. But when it looks like this, you're good to go. Well, let's cut it up so I can show you just what this looks like. And I probably let this cool for 5 or 6 minutes before I sliced into it, so just let it cool for as long as you can stand it. Oh man, I am telling you, we're going to be eating some good dessert tonight. That's a fact. And it actually works a whole lot better if you take it out of the parchment paper and put it on a plate before you cut it. You know, that way nobody that you're serving it to gets a mouthful of parchment paper, because nobody wants that. Look how beautiful this thing holds up. I'm going to go ahead and plate it, and I'm going to show you my 2 favorite ways to serve this. The first way I like to serve it is just with a big plop of my pineapple pudding whip. Makes it absolutely delicious. It's got just a hint of pineapple taste to it, and that goes really good with this chocolate. The other thing I like to do is just serve it with a big old scoop of my coffee chocolate chip ice cream. It is absolutely delicious with it. Or if you don't like any of those options, you can just eat it plain. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. If you like keto desserts as much as I do, I'm gonna put a playlist right here with all my other keto desserts. I know you'll find something in there you're gonna love. If you wanna help me support my channel and keep making videos just like this, I've put a couple options down there in the description of ways you can do it. Hey, enjoy your cottage cheese chocolate crumble. Help me come up with a name for this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.